Hi, I'm Barbara Shying, and I'm here to talk about color today, color mixing, how to get the colors you want when you want them. So I think you'll benefit from this tutorial. Okay, here's my palette, and I added cadmium red light actually. There's no reason you can't use cadmium red. I just happen to have cadmium red light. And it's a more orange red, and I wanted to use that to show you how you mix it. When you mix it with blue, how it changes the violet, and with compared to other reds that are more of a blue red. Okay, so the thing about mixing and knowing your colors is that you have to know what colors lean towards different colors, such as this red leans more towards yellow. So it's more of a yellow red. And this red here, which is Alizarin Crimson, leans more towards the blue side. So when you know those things, it helps when you're mixing to know whether it's going to get grayer or brighter. So also the blues tend to lean towards, or sometimes it's neutral where it doesn't lean towards anything. In that case, you're going to get a brighter color when you mix it with another color that doesn't lean towards anything. Because when something leans towards another color, you're going to have the three primaries involved in mixing. And when you have the three primaries involved in mixing, you're going to get a grayer color. So the less primaries, all three primaries, the less that they're in your mix, the more you're going to get a vibrant color. So like you have to also know your complementary colors. Your complementary colors are yellow and violet, blue and orange, and red and green. Those are your complementary colors. Of course, there's tertiary complements and all that, but we're just talking about the primaries and the secondary colors. But your complements are the colors opposite each other on the color wheel, and that's really important to know when you're painting. The opposite of red is green. When you mix green, I don't have green on my palette, but I can make green with, and the reason why you get gray is because you see the three primaries. I just mixed yellow and blue, and then I have red. So that's three primaries. So you're gonna get a grayer color, and you have gray. So here's your gray. But you can make all different kinds of grays because you're mixing different, you can mix different complements together, and you can get different types of gray. For instance, and you have different blues that you can mix with orange that you can get different grays. So I can mix orange and blue together, and I can make an orangey gray, something that leans towards more orange, or I can make more of a blue gray. I'll just try to get it somewhere in between. Here we have, this is going to be more of a violet. I'll add a little yellow to that to make it a little more orangey, because my orange is a little more on the red side. But anyway, I won't get into that too much. This is like a violety gray, so you can get different grays depending on which complements you mix, how much of one you mix. If you mix more blue into here, You're going to get more of a bluish gray, violet. See, now it's getting more of the violet side. But it's definitely grayed down color. Now, I have this violet color here, and the opposite on the color wheel of violet is yellow. So let's add some yellow to that. I have to add a lot of yellow because it's pretty strong. And there's different violets. This is kind of a red violet, so that's not going to work as much. But if I add a little blue to it to make it more of a blue violet, you'll see that that immediately turns to a gray, but it's a reddish kind of, it's a nice gray. It's different. It's more of a yellow tones in there. So it's fun to experiment with different grays and how to get them. If I use Cerulean Blue and with my orange, too much orange, again, it's a strong orange. Now I'm getting an interesting gray here too. There's so many interesting colors you can come up with. Here's another one. Very nice on a foggy day to have this in the sky, or that's a really neat color. Okay. Now, like some people want to get violet and they get upset because they're using their cadmium red or some other kind of orange red, and they're saying, I can't get a strong enough violet. That's because your red has yellow in it. And we know violet is blue and red together, mixed together. And if you mix, it depends on the blue you use too. But if let's just use cobalt blue, which is a neutral, and well, ultramarine leans more, it's more on the blue violet. But cobalt is very neutral. So if we mix cobalt and cadmium red together, our violet's going to be not as brilliant as you might want, because some people that I've seen, they're trying to make a violet color flower, like a nice bright violet, and they're coming up with this. And they're like, I can't get it to be more violet than that. Well, the reason is because the yellow red that you're using and the blue have three primaries mixed together now. The yellow, the red, and the blue. So you're not going to get as strong, you're going to get a more grayed down violet. So how do we mix a nice strong violet? Is when we don't have yellow in our red. Now I can use Alizarin Crimson, which is more on the blue. See the difference between the reds? That has more blue in it. And it just takes a little practice to see that and just paint with it and see what you think they look like. This definitely looks like it has more yellow in it. This definitely looks like it might have more blue in it. So now if I mix that with my cobalt blue, now look at the violet that I'm getting. That's much different. And depending on how blue you want it or how red you want it, let's add a little water and you'll be able to see the difference. Now we have a real violet. Much different. Let's say I use permanent rose, which is very more pinkish. It has more blue in it. The red has much more blue in it. And then we use cobalt blue with that. Now we're really going to get a stronger violet. As you can see, because it's more leaning toward, the more a color leans towards another that you're mixing, the more you're going to get a stronger color. So this permanent rose is leaning a lot more towards blue. When you use a blue, it's going to be stronger. Okay, green and red, make a gray. Am I thinking? I'm thinking to make a green. That's another thing. When you make green, same thing. Let me get rid of some of this color. Greens can be gray greens, or they can be bright greens. You will want to use those, both of those, in a painting. Maybe not at the same time, but when I paint, I use all those kinds of greens. Okay, so again, it depends on what kind of blue you use to mix with your yellow and the type of yellows you use. This is New Gamboge, which is more of an orange yellow. And guess what? That has more red in it. So red and yellow, and if you mix it with a blue, you're going to get more of a grayed down green versus a brighter yellow, brighter yellow mixed with a neutral blue, you're going to get a brighter green. I'll show you that. That's my cobalt. That's my Windsor yellow. And I'm getting a brighter green. Now it's not going to be super bright, but if I add more yellow, it will. If you add the same amount of each color, it won't lean towards anything. It'll be, but if I add more yellow, it's leaning more towards the yellow and a brighter green. Now, Cerulean Blue leans more towards more of a green blue, and so it has more commonality because it has more yellow in it. And if I add a yellow to it, it's really going to get a lot brighter than with the cobalt, and you'll see that. You can add a little more yellow to it, and look at that. It looks much brighter, because it has a common factor in it, yellow. And when it does have that commonality, it'll get brighter. Let's say I try the New Gamboge. Now that has more red in it. It's an orangey yellow. If I mix that with my neutral, well, let's mix it with the cerulean also and see what that happens. Now, because it has some red in it, red, the yellow, and the blue together, it's going to be more grayed down. You see, I've grayed that down a notch. Good to know when you're painting. How do I make a little grayer green? Just a little bit, and then you can add more blue. You can make it a little more of a blue-green, but it's not going to be shockingly bright. Since this does have red in it, it's more of an orange. Orange and blue are opposites on the color wheel. They're complements. So it's going to result, when you mix this color with any of the blues, you're going to have more grayed down green, and it's a pretty green. Here's what cobalt looks like. Since it doesn't have as much yellow in this cobalt, or it doesn't have any yellow in this cobalt, you are going to have a grayer green because there's not a commonality between those. There's more now. Now you're doing the primaries: blue, a little bit of red, a little bit of yellow, more yellow, a little bit of red, and blue. can get confusing, but if you think about it a little bit, it makes a lot of sense. So the more you put primaries in your mix, the more gray those colors are going to get. And when you start experimenting with other yellows, like quinacridone is a very strong gold, and you can see it here, it's pretty strong. And when you dilute it a little bit, it gets more on the yellow side, stronger yellow. When you mix that with a blue that has more yellow in it, it'll be a nice bright green. So let's try that. But it's nice and bright. It's not as bright as mixing it with yellow itself, pure yellow, but it's very similar. But lots of times you don't want it too bright, so you can mix it with a little deeper tone of yellow and you'll get a nicer, actually it really does look very much the same. So, and then of course you have raw sienna, which is kind of dulled down. There's black in that color, and you're not going to get as bright of a green. And it's going to be grayed down quite a bit. Okay. I think those are the main things we have to look for in color mixing. Is mixing the blues with your yellows and your reds. So when you're dealing with your primary mixing, those are the main things. Once you understand that, you'll understand how to mix other colors together. But I would urge you to look at your palette and see where your colors, what colors veer towards the others. Veer towards yellow, veer towards red, veer towards blue. And so you take your primaries and you look at those. Like I said, Alizarin Crimson, that veers more towards a blue. And your cadmium have more yellow in it. So they're going to react differently to blue when you mix it. One good thing to do after you've experimented with some color, and I would do it while you're painting so that you don't forget, is write down underneath it what you mixed. Cerulean and what we need, New Gamboge. This will help, and you can make a little book and you can write these down and just maybe take one color and like cerulean and mix it with your different yellows and write those down, and then you have something to reference too. And it definitely helps when you're painting, and you can look at your chart while you're painting and know what to mix, and after a while you'll get it, and it's just a good guide. Something else I want to talk about is mixing black with your colors. It's okay to mix black with color. A lot of artists don't do it, and they rather use their complements to mix together to to gray down a color rather than black, because black can tend to dull your color. And I agree, it can. But there are some instances you might want to use it, like in a sky, or skies can look quite ominous. And if you want to mix, I have neutral tint here, and if you want to make a darker blue with like cobalt blue and mix a little black in it, you can get a very nice dark blue like that. You can see it's almost like a Payne's gray, and this is Payne's gray here. Well, Payne's gray is a little different. So what's nice about it is if you don't want a Payne's gray color and you want something more of a blue that's deep, like a blueberry or something, and you can make it more like a blueberry by adding more blue to it. It's okay. It's okay to mix the black with it. Don't let anyone say you can't. I never let them say that to me. Sometimes, like, instead of a burnt umber, you take your burnt sienna. You want to make a burnt umber. You can by mixing black. It's too much black. But you can, I have some teal in there. Don't want that. But this is more of a burnt umber color. You don't have to have burnt umber on your palette. You can just, and a lot of these colors that you have black in it, and that's why they are what they are. Burnt umber has black in it. So all you have to do is mix black with your burnt sienna and you will get burnt umber. You can mix black with red. You can mix black with, let's see, if I mix black with Alizarin Crimson, I get a very deep, you can mix, you know, you want a black that's not as black, you can make it a reddish, have a reddish look to it. It's helpful, and I wouldn't say no to that. And then colors like cerulean, you can experiment. Now generally I wouldn't do this too often. It just will dull your paintings a little bit. It's fun to experiment. Now I've done a painting where I'll do a whole painting in a black and white. I'll do a whole value study and then I will paint on top of it, and it makes a very interesting painting. I'll show you a painting I did that with. This is a painting I did where I first did it in black and white study and then went over it with my regular paint, and it definitely has a different effect. You can try different things with your black paint and it makes it interesting, just a little different. Now the same holds true for white, and if you add titanium white to a blue, it adds more atmosphere to your colors, and that's okay to do too. Here is white added to blue. Now lots of times if I want something to look further back and have some atmospheric perspective, I'll add white to it, so that later when I paint something in front of it, this will recede back. And you can see by how that changes it. That's just straight blue, and that's with the white. Sometimes when I do a painting and I feel like something is too bright, I will put some white on top of it and it disappears. I mean, you can put a lot of white on it and it'll start to fade and disappear, and it won't be as white looking. So, but look how that is so neat looking right there. And you could do that with the sky. You could experiment with this, and it doesn't hurt to experiment. So adding white, I like to sometimes add white to my greens to push it back. It'll push it back. As you see, let's say that's some trees in the background there. And that definitely pushes back that there's times to use it, there's times you don't want to use that. But let's make a darker, there's times, see how that just pushes that back when I add something dark next to it. A darker green or anything. It'll look like there's something in front and it's darker, and something that goes back behind it. So don't be afraid to experiment with that. Add white on top of things. Sometimes it looks like fog. You can also do fog by just diluting your paint, but you can also do fog by adding the white paint. It's really fun to experiment with that. There's a book that I really like. It's called Making Color Sing by Jean Dobie. And she really has some good color theory in here. And it's very helpful if you really want to get into color. It's an older book. I'm guessing it's still around. It was written a while ago, but she talks about complements and gets really involved with it. So it's very beneficial, and I would recommend this book, Making Color Sing. Okay, I hope that was helpful. And if you have any questions, please write it below and I'll be glad to answer. So to recap, I'm going to use my cow painting as an example. And when you have a lot of greens, which I used in this area here, I used bright greens down here, and then I toned the green down, and you can actually see some red in there. In order to tone a green down, you need to add red. It's complement. And when I brightened my green, I added more yellow. And then as I got higher and I wanted it darker, I maybe added stronger blues to it and black, and threw in some reds too. Reds and greens together will make a black because they're complements, so I can use that, or I can add some black and throw some more colors in there. This is an acrylic painting, so it does work a little differently than watercolor, but it's a great example of how you can go from your light greens to your mid greens and grade greens and to your dark green values. So don't be afraid to add some complements to your colors, but be careful how many you add. And you can get a few complements in the process. Also, if you want a red nose, but you don't want Rudolph, the red-nosed cow, you can add a little bit of its complement to the red. So you add a little green to the red. Instead of adding red to the green, you can add green to your red and just a little bit, and you'll get a grayed down red, so you won't have it too bright. And if you want brown, you can add all three complements together and you can get brown. So I hope that was helpful for you, and don't forget to check in again on another episode of Watercolor for Life.